Hi there, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and members of the public. I am Tatiana Arnaud, your city engineer, and I am here to present the adoption of the City of Oxnard Capital Improvement Program for fiscal years 2021 through 2026. The recommendation is that the City Council approve and authorize first the fiscal year 21-22 projects to be selected from the proposed City of Oxnard 5-year capital improvement program, and second to adopt the 2021-2026 City of Oxnard 5-year capital improvement program. So for this presentation, I will be giving you a brief overview of the capital improvement program, or what I'll otherwise be referring to as the CIP. Then I'll follow that by summarizing the new projects that will be found in this latest CIP. And finally, I will wrap the presentation up by highlighting some accomplishments from this past fiscal year. So what is the CIP? Essentially, it's the city's plan to build or restore our facilities over the next 5 years. It does not address maintenance work, but some examples of projects do include the construction and major alterations of buildings, hardware for IT, replacement of cast iron and asbestos pipes, replacement of playground structures, street rehab, traffic signal rehab, and work over at our wastewater plant, our water campus, at the materials recycling facility over off of Del Norte. Things of that nature. So any city-owned facility that we have that requires any sort of improvements falls under the capital improvement program. So what kind of projects qualify under the CIP? So essentially they must meet 2 criteria. First, it must consist of the construction, erection, alteration, renovation, improvement, demolition, or repair work involving any city-owned facility. And it is a project that must cost at least $100,000. I do like to note to people that studies and rolling equipment do not qualify under the CIP. So what is the process we go through to produce such a document, right? So basically the departments identify the necessary capital improvements across the board. So whether it's facility work or street rehab work, pipe replacement work, things of that nature. Basically we gather all the data here in Public Works Engineering, and then we review the projects for conformity with the general plan, and we review them against any other need assessments that have been conducted previously. Then we verify cost estimates and determine the priority for funding. We then wrap that all up, put it into an actual CIP book, and we present that to the Planning Commission to determine conformity with the general plan, and I'll get into a little bit more in a little bit. And finally, we then present the CIP to the Public Works and Transportation Committee, which was already done, and now I'm here presenting to City Council for approval. So the CIP actually has 4 appendices at the very back. They all essentially show all the same projects, except they're sorted in various ways. So Appendix A will sort it by fiscal year and then funding source. Appendix B sorts it by fiscal year, then by district. Appendix C by fiscal year alone. And finally, Appendix D by fiscal year, then by priority. These projects in general are categorized into 6 different categories. The first being buildings, followed by IT, parks and open space, seawalls, transportation and drainage, and finally, at the back of that list, you'll find the utilities. So here's an example of one of the project sheet layouts, and I'll go through this quickly. So you'll always find a project title at the top, along with its location and the council districts that it impacts, or if it's not specific to a district but a citywide benefit, you'll see citywide in there. It gives you a project description, purpose and need, the relevant category and goal of the general plan. And what I want to say here is that while we only select one for purposes of displaying it on the sheet layout, I do want to make note of the fact that there are multiple general plan categories and goals that any given project can fall into. We just select the most relevant to each individual project. In addition to that, you will also find the fiscal years the project will span, the funding source and the cost estimate, the funding priority level, and finally on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see the name, photo, and contact information for the project manager. Some of the projects that are out in future fiscal years, you'll see it'll just say to be determined, and that's because that's an outer project. We haven't actually identified an individual that will be managing that. We will be doing that as we get closer to actually starting those projects. All right, so now we're going to get into the part of the presentation where I'm going to be essentially showing you the new projects that you will find in the capital improvement program. These are projects that have not shown up in the CIP previously. And so we're highlighting a couple here on this slide, but essentially the Oxnard Aquatic Center, that was a council priority item that has now made it into the CIP as a result. We are also adding a Wi-Fi in the parks project. So the idea is that we're trying to create spaces for the children in our various neighborhoods to have access to Wi-Fi should they not have internet access at home. And so that is an endeavor that we'd like to start on here in the relatively near future. And in addition to that, we are going to go ahead and do a project that we just got grant funding for, which is for the Ramona School pedestrian crossing improvements. And so that has made it into this year's CIP as well. So here I'll go down the list quickly. And again, these are just the new projects that appeared. Any other projects that were in the CIP previously will not be listed as part of this. But I already mentioned the Oxnard Aquatic Center. We also have added a citywide public restroom improvements project, a new senior center at 5th and Patterson, again, one of the council priorities, so that made it into the CIP as a result. South Oxnard Senior Center tenant improvements and the Wilson Senior Center tenant improvements. In addition to that, under Parks and Open Space, we have added the Oxnard Trail Light Replacement Phase 2 project, Wi-Fi in the parks that I mentioned previously. We are also doing citywide intersection improvements, Cypress Road Railroad crossing upgrade, 5 Points intersection modernization, as well as a 5 Points intersection traffic signal rehab project. So one is to essentially just rehab what we have there today so that it remains functional and whatnot, but we also do want to strive to modernize that intersection. So we'll be starting the design on that as well simultaneously. And we also have the Oxnard Trail Class 1 bike path from Camino del Sol to Cooper Road, which we received a grant for recently. We are also adding the Oxnard Trail Class 1 bike path from now Cooper down to 2nd. We are seeking grant funding for that. I mentioned the Ramona Preschool pedestrian crossing enhancements, which we received grants for. We also received a grant for the Safe Routes to School Safety Enhancement Project, so that's made it into the CIP as a result. We've also added stormwater conveyance improvements along Oxnard Boulevard, and finally, the US 101 and Del Norte interchange upgrade project has been included as well. We are seeking grant funding for that project. Under utilities, we've added the environmental resources tenant improvements project, a couple over at the Oxnard wastewater treatment plant, which included the effluent pump station improvements, the maintenance building expansion, and the plant control center locker room remodel. In addition to that, for water distribution, we've added the improvements to the CMWD transmission main. That's a 45-inch main that actually supplies the cities. I believe it's about 50 to 60% of our water supply comes from this transmission main. So there's a project where we intend to repair the pipe that's there now and then create a redundancy. So actually installing a whole new pipe adjacent to it so that in case one goes down, we have the other to tap into. And finally, for water production, we have the blending station 1 transfer switch and panel replacement. All right, so we can't talk about the CIP as a whole without addressing the fact that there are underfunded capital needs. One of the most notable one are the citywide street improvements, which relates back to our payment management update presentation that will also be on the same council agenda. The citywide alley reconstruction similarly. Then there are various stormwater system upgrades throughout the city that we actually do not have funding identified for. Citywide facility repairs. Here's an image of our Colonia boxing gym, for instance. It's in disrepair, and it's been very difficult to locate funding to address this. And finally, citywide park, playground, restroom, and sport court improvements as well. But it's over the years, they've been deteriorating. A lot of those playgrounds and restrooms are original, and they've just come to the end of their useful life. And we really need funding to address those and replace those with newer, safer facilities. Some of the challenges we also face are that we do have limited resources across various city departments that do affect our workflow. So it's not just about whether or not Public Works Engineering has the staff to be able to manage these projects from design to construction. But with all the contracts that we put out and everything that we do on the back end, that actually does affect our friends over at purchasing and finance and public works administration, right? So there's limited resources across the city, and it does have an impact on how we are able to deliver these projects. We do anticipate an increase in workload due to Measure-E. Again, it just goes back to we already have limited resources. They'll be further impacted as a result. So not to say Measure-E is a bad thing. It's obviously a fantastic thing, except that that's just something that I need to point out. We have been experiencing a lot of construction delays, primarily due to material shortages across the board. For instance, our HDPE pipe or plastic pipe in general is severely delayed as a result of the Arctic event down in Texas and Louisiana, where the majority of that plastic pipe is produced. Rolling blackouts and things of that nature have slowed the production of concrete, for instance. So we're seeing delays in that. And of course, with those delays and supply and demand rules, we are seeing an increase in construction costs. And those are not something that we can easily predict, and definitely not accurately. We do our best and use any relevant data, but that is, again, a challenge that we face. As far as resources we need to complete these projects in a timely manner, I am recommending that we have several on-call construction contracts put in place. First and foremost is a street resurfacing on-call contract. I mentioned it in the pavement management update presentation. I'm saying it here again. We need an on-call construction contract for street resurfacing and alley reconstruction in order to be able to achieve those goals for those projects in a fast and efficient manner. In addition to that, I am looking to get approval in the future for on-call construction contracts for roof repairs and replacements, as well as the playground replacements. In addition to that, not only do we need additional staff, but we already have some challenges with lack of office space for the staff we have or the vacancies we have now. So that's just, again, a challenge, but also a resource that we need. Enough of that, let's get into the good stuff. So for this past fiscal year, this is what we've accomplished thus far. So we have 35 projects that are currently actively in the design phase, 12 that are in the bid phase, 15 that are in construction right now, valued at about $35 million, and another 15 that were completed that were valued at about $15 million. The majority of those are the street resurfacing projects that a lot of the community has noticed and things of that nature. But I will be highlighting a few of those projects from this fiscal year, as well as providing the actual full list of those completed projects. So for starters, the Mandalay Bay seawall repairs, we repaired 77 pilasters with concrete jackets. Here's a before and after photograph of that. Street resurfacing throughout the city. Again, I know that we've been getting a lot of actual comments, public comments at our council meetings, and I'm very grateful for that, because our staff should know that people are noticing and that, that they're being acknowledged for the work that they're doing. So I hope that those keep on coming. This is just a sample image of Esplanade Drive getting resurfaced. We did a roof repair over the Del Norte facility, over the office spaces. And here's the actual full list of what was completed. So by the end of the fiscal year, we anticipate the roof replacement for the Powell South Wing will be done. The Oxnard Trail Light Replacement Phase 1 should be completed. We've completed the pilaster jacket repairs at Mandalay Bay, and here are all the various street resurfacing projects that we were able to complete this last fiscal year. So commercial areas, street resurfacing, Commercial Central Neighborhood, Five Points Neighborhood, Rice Avenue, Rose Avenue, Saviors Road, and in there we also have a drainage swale construction over at the River Ridge Golf Course. This was for regulatory purposes, but that was completed as well. In addition to that, we replaced 31 existing battery backup systems through the traffic signal modernization project. We resurfaced Vineyard from the 101 to Oxnard Boulevard. That was one of note. I know that was affecting a lot of our community, and especially commuters coming into the city, things of that nature. We also installed a brand new traffic signal and pedestrian ADA improvements and crosswalks over at Rose and Gary, right in front of the Oxnard College. And finally, we had our thin maintenance overlay phase 2 project, which was just preventative maintenance throughout the city. And I think, again, a lot of the community noticed, and I'm grateful for that. Under the utilities, we are actually currently in construction and anticipate will be done by the end of the fiscal year for the waste tipping floor restoration. And finally, that roof repair that I showed images for earlier, that was completed as well. So as far as the financial impact goes, there is no direct fiscal impact with the adoption of this proposed 5-year CIP. The CIP provides a full fiscal presentation of the capital projects to plan to be undertaken in the next 5 years, provided the funding is available. So that has to be noted. While we would love to get all those projects done in the next 5 years, it's all contingent upon funding and resources. And projects that council identify and approve to be adopted in the CIP for fiscal year 21-22 will be presented for adoption during the city's budget approval process in June, so next month. I do want to note that there is an attachment A, as part of this staff report that actually lists all of the fiscal year 21-22 projects in one place. So you don't have to flip through the CIP to figure that out. That list is provided for you for your review. And before I conclude this presentation, I do want to acknowledge all the hard work for the various staff members that it took to actually put this whole thing together. Not only here in Public Works Engineering, but our friends over in Budget. So Beth, Bo, and Connie Servant, thank you so much for your patience and all the hard work you put into this. Scott Colwith over in Community Development, their planning manager, was integral in the process of getting this whole thing to the Planning Commission, and Dee, who was there helping him and bearing with me as we were trying to get things submitted for that. And then, of course, we have Nick Boas, who is our supervising civil engineer, who is actually overseeing the CIP and its execution, along with his project managers, Gianna, George, Omar, and our inspectors, Ramon, Bruce, and Guillermo. And obviously, I mentioned it also in the PMP update, but Asita, Georgina, June, Juan, and the engineering team who are doing all our in-house designs. And then we also have Tim Beeman, our senior civil, who essentially helps us run with the water wastewater programs, and our admin and procurement team. So Renee and Lisa, Lupe, Stephanie, thank you all. This has been quite a ride, but it's going to be, I think, an exciting year coming forward, especially with the passing of Measure E. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but we're grateful to have the opportunity to do this work for the members of our community. And with that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.